Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it helps us out so much. I know I say it every single week, but it does not get less important on a weekly basis. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot to us. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, it all just helps the exposure of the show. And once again, thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going alright, Mark. Good to be here again. I feel a little bit today like I have been jumped by my job and I'm kind of exhausted, so if I start just weeping at some point during the show, put it down to that.
Deary me, man. Well, Lewis, let's cheer you up and let's talk about some video games. What have you been playing this week?
Well, Mark, mostly just some more Ghost of Tsushima, which I've been picking up at various points just for a few hours here and there, pretty much. But I gather that you have been playing substantially more than I have over the last week.
I have completed that list. I have, in fact, completed that. And I've platinumed it, in fact.
Wow, yeah.
Every single trophy. This is one of my very few platinum trophies. I am by no means an achievement hunter at all. But at the end of playing this game, I had 3 trophies to get, and honestly, each of them took me less than a minute. I then got the platinum after
just like
the
collectibles
game.
You still had to get, basically.
No, I had actually done all the collectibles. It was 3 weird random things that you had to do within the map. Trophy stuff. It was nonsense. But nonetheless, I got the platinum trophy. I really enjoyed it, man. It was a great game. It's by no means a perfect game. Absolutely not. Would never claim that, but it was really good fun, and I thought it was 100% worth my time. Like, I do not regret the amount of hours that I put into it, which probably was 40 plus in the end, but I do not regret that in the slightest. I think that it was a great game and a great use of my time.
Nice.
Really good. Really enjoyed it.
Between where you were last week, because it felt to me like from what you said last week, I thought you were probably about halfway through.
Yeah, that turned out not to be true.
Oh, were you much further ahead than you thought you were then?
It's just that the last island isn't as long as the other two.
Okay,
basically,
cool.
That's how it worked out. So the game is done in 3 acts, and those 3 acts all happen within one area of the map, basically, although there are reasons to go back. And I just thought that the last island would take as long as the second and first island did for me anyway, and I just found that the last island didn't take me as long at all. It was not island, it's just a section of the map. Last part of the map just didn't take me as long, basically. So yeah, I was a wee bit wrong on that. Finished that a wee bit quicker than even I thought I would. As I was ramping towards the end, I was thinking, I've only got a few missions left here. Like, you can sense it in the story. Yeah, finished, done, platinumed.
Good stuff.
Completely finished. Yeah. Literally nothing to even go back and do.
There's no indication at the moment that there'll be any DLC as far as I can remember.
Oh no, I don't think that there will be DLC. I mean, I actually think that this game deserves a prequel, which is an odd thing to say, because in the lore there is an event that has happened prior to the events that are currently happening that tie in a bunch of the characters as well, and I think that sounds like a great story, and I'm just thinking, man, they could just make that game. I think that's really lining up for a prequel, and I'm calling it now. In 2 years time when that's announced, I'm going to look like a genius.
Good stuff. I hope it comes true. Yeah, that sounds interesting. I've progressed the story a little bit now, still in the first section. I think I'm more or less at the end of that section now, from again just kind of reading between the lines of what's happening story wise. I'm kind of excited just to keep going with it, but it just, in comparison to some of the other really story driven games that I've played recently, it feels a lot more relaxed than that. So
definitely. It's not like The Last of Us, which is just story. So I mean, you are only playing the narrative of the game, whereas in an open world games, this is one of the nice things about an open world game, is that you can just piss off and do whatever you want, just do a couple of side quests and do whatever you like, which I completely did at some points, and I largely just went around the map just doing wee things here and there, whether it's one of the haikus that you can do that you can see in all the trailers, none of this is spoilers, or the baths that you can get into, or what, like all these things just dotted around, or the foxes that you can pet, you know what I mean, all that stuff, which all contributed to my platinum trophy, of course.
So did you have to get all of them to get the platinum though? You have to find all of those things?
Yeah. Okay. They just pop up on the map as you go along, and it's not like Assassin's Creed where there's 10,000 of these things to do. There's maybe about 30 or 40. Yeah. And over the course of the game, that's not actually that much.
Yeah, as you say, you're generally just doing it as you go.
Good. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to get further through it, but I'll probably still be picking away at it for weeks, I think, the way I'm playing it at the moment.
Undoubtedly sure that you will be listening.
Well, the other thing that I've been playing this week, though, is a little bit of Fall Guys.
Oh, wow. The internet sensation. I must disclose as well, Lewis, that immediately after we recorded last week's podcast, we tried to play Fall Guys and the servers were down. So I have still not played Fall Guys, Lewis, so please do tell.
Yeah, so that I think that was on launch day that happened. So I
that
played
was
it
on launch day.
maybe 3 or 4 days later. Like I feel like it was Thursday or Friday night. The servers were fine. I had absolutely no hassle getting into. I played 3 matches in the end, including multiple rounds within those matches. Never had any issue. No lag, no dropouts, no nothing. Each match starts with 60 players, but oftentimes when it actually begun, there was more like 40ish. So I don't know if that's a lot of people dropping out right at the start or whatever.
Interesting.
But man, it is fun. It is like hysterically fun and cutthroat at times. Like that was I sent this message to you.
That's what you told me. And what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that as much as it's kind of day-glow, plasticky stupidness, there's also this sense of like, I have to fucking get ahead of you people to qualify for this next round, and I am going to do anything I can to get there. And that can, there'll be times where you're all trying to funnel through a doorway. Say one of the mini games is like 1 door of 5 is a real door or whatever, and once the first person discovers which the real one is, everyone's trying to get through there. And at that point, man, the gloves are off, and I was sitting there on my couch alone playing this, cackling with laughter. This is probably like midnight or whatever. That feeling of like, I can see the finish line and I've just been eliminated, and I'd be like disappointed but still laughing, and it's got a real thread of competitiveness in it, but it also doesn't feel like horrible online video game competitiveness because it's just so stupid.
So it is cutthroat, but it doesn't feel cutthroat.
It doesn't, yeah.
And instead of being angry about the cutthroat thing, you are cackling to yourself, quotes.
Exactly that, yeah. And it's got a really nice way of handling like when you get eliminated, and the feeling of qualifying for the next round is really good. So at the furthest I got was onto the 3rd game. I think there's 5 in total in what they call a show, so it's all presented as if this is an actual TV
like
show.
A game show,
yeah. And so you can get knocked out as one of the last 10 in the first round, and then it gets the levels of how many people get through each round changes as you go. One of the levels I think is always a team game, basically what I got, sort of zones but with footballs. Also there's a mini game that is pretty much identical to Rocket League except you're just a fall guy instead of a car. So it's just like it mixes it up. Like what you've probably seen if you've just seen little trailers of this are the races, which are big obstacle courses basically with all sorts of stuff.
So that's largely what I've seen.
And that's the kind of the bulk of it, but there's some really interesting other mini games in there, and particularly when the field narrows down to about 10, you get some really like tense stuff. I was watching a guy finish one of the matches, and the stuff that he was doing to stay alive, to eventually he ended up coming second, but to try and win the crown was astonishing. So there's obviously people who are getting good at it already, and I'm excited to give it a bit more of a go because it was so much fun.
Nice one, man. Do you think you'll go back and play it again?
I'll definitely give it a few more goes. Like I'll never get stuck into it the way some people will, but yeah, it was fun enough to be like, I'll just drop into this every now and again. I can see us playing it after we've recorded the show sometimes,
cool.
It's that kind of thing. So yeah,
nice one, man. Well, I definitely need to get to playing it at some point, so I will look forward to playing it with you then.
Good stuff.
All right, Lewis, I think it is time for the news. All right, and news item number 1. Xbox, Lewis, have delayed Halo Infinite until 2021, and in the process have also announced that the Xbox Series X will launch in November. This all happened literally moments ago. Now, I know that I've said that on this podcast a few times, and what I really mean by that is it's happened a couple of hours ago. This happened as Lewis was travelling round here to record this podcast. So this is the hottest of hot takes you're getting from us just now. And it has also caused us to completely rethink the show, which was real fun to do just as we were about to start recording. But regardless of that, 343 have made this statement on Twitter.
Today, I want to share an important Halo Infinite development update with the community. We have made the difficult decision to shift our release to 2021 to ensure the team has adequate time to deliver a Halo game experience that meets our vision. The decision to shift our release is the result of multiple factors that have contributed to development challenges, including the ongoing COVID-related impacts affecting us all this year. I want to acknowledge the hard work from our team at 343 Industries, who have remained committed to making a great game and finding solutions to development challenges. However, it is not sustainable for the well-being of our team or the overall success of the game to ship it this holiday. We know this will be disappointing to many of you, and we all share in that sentiment. The passion and support the community has shown over the years has been incredible and inspiring. We wanted nothing more than to play our game with the community this holiday. The extra time will let us finish the critical work necessary to deliver the most ambitious Halo game ever at the quality we know our fans expect. Thank you for your support and understanding.
Will Tuttle over on the Xbox blog has also made this statement.
Today, we announced updates to Halo Infinite's launch timing. Our vision at Xbox and 343 Industries has always been to deliver the most ambitious Halo game ever for our fans, while also balancing the team's well-being. To do that, we will need some more time to finish the critical work necessary to launch Halo Infinite, which will come in 2021. We've plenty to keep you busy until Chief arrives. There will be thousands of games to play, spanning 4 generations, when Xbox Series X launches globally this November, and over 100 optimised for Xbox Series X titles, built to take full advantage of our most powerful console, are planned for this year. And with brand new console features like hardware-accelerated DirectX ray tracing, frame rates up to 120 frames per second, faster loading times, and quick resume for multiple games, playing will look and feel better no matter which games you choose to play on day one.
But that game will not be Halo Infinite, Lewis.
It will not, man.
It will not be Halo Infinite.
Not.
Now, Lewis, last week I said on this podcast, Halo Infinite is undelayable.
Yep.
Because of its ties to the Xbox Series X launch. That turned out not to be true. But honestly, I think that this is an incredibly commendable decision from both Xbox and 343, because without putting too fine a point on it, the gameplay that they showed off of Halo Infinite wasn't really all that, was it? Let's be honest.
I think you've made your feelings on that clear on the show before, Mac.
Well, I mean, I have, of course I have, but I think that this is actually a really commendable decision. Like, I do genuinely believe that they should be applauded for this, because I think that this would have been a brutally difficult decision to make, both on the Xbox side and the 343 side.
Yeah, the conversation between those two companies over this must have been extremely difficult. Because, like you said, Mark, this game is supposed to be the hallmark of what Xbox Series X is. This is it. And they have had to say it can't be it, and it's going to have to launch next year. The fact that they are so keen on pointing out the issues around the team's well-being, I think, is an interesting thing to include here.
Well, I think that it's been a little known secret now that there's been a lot of crunch at that studio, basically. Exactly. There's been a hell of a lot of crunch at that studio, and quite frankly, the results of that crunch isn't up to scratch either. So I think that this game, as I said last week, probably needs another 6 more months.
Yeah.
Whether or not it gets that will be interesting to see, because they've not put a month, or they've certainly not put a date on 2021 yet. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was like April.
Really?
Like, I really wouldn't. I don't think that they're aiming for that, but I don't think that they're going to come out with a new date until they are absolutely certain they're going to hit it. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was April or March, April time. We would say.
That kind of like spring window.
Because anyone, I think, who is expecting it in January, I don't think it's going to happen, honestly.
I think that's almost a harder delay to justify from the Xbox perspective. If you're like, this game is coming out a month or 6 weeks after it was originally planned, but that plan was to coincide with the launch of this console.
I know.
That's a much harder thing than to be saying this needs 6 months. It's almost like if it was close enough to launch, then they would probably just do it and try and fix it with day one patches. Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're saying, no, this needs longer. We have to definitively say 2021. We're definitely pushing this deeper into the year.
But that means that all the marketing around this game, which has all been Halo day one, Master Chief on the box, getting Halo for Christmas, not having Halo for Christmas. Yeah. It's a big deal. And now I know that Xbox are moving away from how we traditionally think about getting these games, and that game will be coming to people day one on Games Pass, which during the generational crossover, I reckon a lot of people will definitely be picking up. So getting those units sold at Christmas and whatever maybe won't be quite as big a deal, but it's still quite a big deal.
Yeah. Because at the moment it's hard to see what they're going to now hang the launch on. Like, what is the big
that's a very good point, Lewis. I genuinely don't know. Because I genuinely don't know what their big first party launch title is. I can't think of one.
I think they don't have one, essentially. They did say that they had more to announce after the last Xbox Series X showcase, but there are only a handful of studios and only a handful
But it's not Fable.
It's not exactly.
It's not Forza. It's not Gears. I really don't know what they have now. I've never... Again, this is super fresh. Like, this is real fresh off the presses here. So I have not had a lot of time to digest this. But yeah, I really don't know what their big launch title is going to be. Like, I don't know what they're slapping on all their boxes. Is it going to be Minecraft again?
God, that wouldn't be ideal. I think what they'll do is they'll lean into third-party partnerships. They've clearly got a deal with Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
And Cyberpunk.
And Cyberpunk to an extent, although they're being funny about how they're messaging that being a current-gen versus a next-gen game.
Well, it's a cross-gen.
Yeah,
so
but whether or not it'll be there at launch on the Series X, we don't know. I think like the blog post that they've put out, they want to draw attention to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. They've mentioned things like Gears Tactics, Watch Dogs Legion, The Medium. It's some of those games, but they're not even necessarily full exclusives.
I mean, again, we both think that the medium looks cracking. I've got nothing against that. It's not something that I would want to be launching my console with.
Not at all, yeah.
I mean, you used to have, and by used to have, I mean 20 minutes ago, you used to have Halo Infinite versus Spider-Man, which was a strong play by both. Now you have Spider-Man, which is still a strong play by PlayStation, versus Question mark?
Essentially, yeah. Well, I guess it's like against the Xbox library. That's what they now want you to think of it as. You're not buying this box to get Halo anymore. You're buying this box to get Game Pass. The fact that they're playing up again, they're the 4 generations of gaming. It's all about saying, don't worry, there's tons here.
Yeah.
It's just that none of it is fresh and new and exciting. And that's hard to then convince someone to spend £500 on that, you know?
Absolutely. It's unfathomable. Honestly, if you told me last week that this was going to happen, I simply wouldn't have believed it.
I mean, yeah,
I simply would not.
We
have
were having
believed
that discussion.
This would have been possible. I think that this is a real bad knock against Xbox for the launch. Anyway, I think that a lot of people will be very disappointed in this. I think that a lot of people will either now wait to buy an Xbox, or a lot of people will then say, well, actually, this is probably just going to be a PlayStation now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I will wait also to maybe get my Xbox at some point down the line, maybe when I can get Halo on it or whatever. I mean, we've seen PlayStation have bad launch. I mean, the PS3 launched with shit all. Even the PS4 launch wasn't actually great with first-party titles.
Yeah.
But that just went so badly wrong for Xbox. It almost didn't matter, do you know what I mean? But you want these games to hang your hat on. One of the biggest things about the Xbox One launch was that it didn't come with a Halo. That was one of the big knocks against it. So they were trying to do that this time round and rectify this and go, yeah, we are doing exactly what you want us to do at launch. Here is your big Halo game. And now we're saying, well, actually, this is going to be the first quarter of 2021 at the absolute earliest. Wow. Huge news. I have not fully digested it, right?
Yeah.
I apologise if this sounds a wee bit more rambling than usual, but I'm fully stunned by this announcement, to be honest.
You feel like Xbox will be moving behind the scenes quickly now to do something, so I suspect we're going to be talking about this a fair bit over the weeks to come, because, you know, they've got to have something else up their sleeve now. They've got to try and make some sort of deal. They've got to move another game up the ladder and try and get that out as close to launch as possible. I mean, it's worth saying that launch windows are often pretty bad for games generally. Like
they are.
We don't often get absolute killers.
Felt like this generation was like, no, we are changing that.
Yeah.
We are removing that narrative from the launch of these consoles, both in the Xbox side and in the PlayStation side. And a big, huge, massive part of that for Xbox was bloody Halo. I mean, again, it doesn't get much bigger than Halo. And sadly, it's not going to be there. All right, news item number 2. Sticking with Xbox, Lewis. It has been confirmed by a leak that Xbox are going to be announcing a second, cheaper console. And that console will, in fact, be called the Xbox Series S. Now, this all came from a Twitter user called ZachX, who has somehow managed to buy an actual next-gen Xbox controller for $35 on a website called OfferUp, which, so far as I can work out, is basically Gumtree. And this has actually been confirmed by The Verge to be a real next-gen Xbox controller in the wild somehow. And as if that wasn't crazy enough, Lewis, the manual that comes with the controller that you would expect to get with any piece of hardware these days says that the controller is compatible with the Xbox Series X/S, which to me, all but, it absolutely confirms that it's going to be coming and it's going to be called this, as far as I'm concerned. This is also the second, quotes, white controller that has leaked in the past 2 weeks, also basically confirming that whatever this next box is going to be white in colour as well. Although there have been rumours kicking around for God knows how long, absolutely ages and ages and ages, this has basically confirmed that, as far as I'm concerned, like, it's absolutely dead cert. It's going to be happening, and by all accounts, it's probably going to be happening this month. According to The Verge, the Series S is likely to have 7.5 gigabytes of usable RAM, 4 teraflop GPU, the same CPU as the Series X, and presumably a SSD. However, that is quite a significant step down from the Series X's famous 12 teraflops, and quite a step down from the 16 gigs of RAM that they will have, they as in both of the next gen consoles. And is actually, when I looked at the raw numbers anyway, it's only a marginal, or not a marginal step up, that's unfair. It is a noticeable step up from the Xbox One X. It definitely is a noticeable step up from the Xbox One X, but might not be as much as you were expecting it to be. So again, this kind of raises the question, because Xbox might be putting out a secondary console that is quite a noticeable step down from the primary console, if you like, does that hamper Xbox game development because it's lowest common denominator, right?
That's the big conversation around Xbox, right? Like everything that they are doing just now that has this need to be cross-generational and not exclude anyone on any platform that they've put out there. I mean, we've had this discussion plenty of times. How is it that those games could avoid being affected by that?
Well, they seem to have backtracked on a lot of the cross-generational stuff as far as I'm concerned, with a lot of their games except Halo Infinite, which is now delayed. But in terms of game development, this has long been a question around Xbox, and Xbox's secondary console, the Series S, isn't like PlayStation. So PlayStation have basically got two of the same console, but one of them has a disc drive and one of them doesn't. So far as we are aware, anyway, is that these are basically the exact same things. One of them has a disc drive, one of them doesn't. That is not the case here at all. This is a noticeable, not downgrade, but it's certainly not as powerful as the Series X. Certainly not.
They've got previous on this, right? Like, that's the same approach that they took to console boxes for this generation. I don't know off the top of my head how different the One X and S are in terms of power.
Oh, I mean, it's a big jump.
So it's going to be, if you're an Xbox gamer and you're in that ecosystem, I don't imagine the difference between these consoles is going to feel particularly different to the current generation, if you know what I mean. In that there'll be a significant separation between the X and the S. Gamers are used to that. I don't think that's a big surprise that would be the case. But
I think that it's so close to the One X. I think that's what's the most surprising thing about it. It's much closer in my mind anyway, and again, certainly looking at the raw numbers, and I think if we've learned anything from this generation is that looking at the raw numbers isn't necessarily indicative of how well these consoles are going to perform. And I have no doubt, there's no doubt in my mind at all, before anyone starts worrying about this, that the Series S is going to outperform the One X probably by miles, despite the fact that the raw numbers don't really look that much more. But the point is that it is still probably closer to that One X than it is to
the Series X.
The Series X, or again, at least just looking at it on paper. And I mean, I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world, so I could be proven very easily totally wrong on that. But on paper, at least it looks like that.
It's also hard to see where they are positioning that console. Like, who do they think the Series S is for? Because,
people like me.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going with this. There are people like you who are traditionally PlayStation gamers who might jump across in a cheaper box that runs things fine, better than fine, really well, but not as well as the top thing is. There's definitely that, but for a lot of people, we know that they're winding down One X production, so that is essentially gone, and they're dropping this in that middle space between the One S and the Series X. To me, the interesting question there is, like, how many current Xbox gamers go to that model? I can't see, if you're really serious about being on the Xbox system, you've probably got a One S or a One X already. Are you going to upgrade to something that is broadly similar to the One X?
I mean, yes, because Xbox have sort of backtracked on the forward compatibility of the previous generation. So I think that might be a very cheap option, because as we've just said, this is a noticeable step down from the Series X and the PlayStation 5. Like, this is a noticeable drop down, which means that this will be the cheapest console, I think, maybe by quite a distance. Like, we're talking about knocking on the door of 500 quid for all of these consoles, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less, depending on what you want. But I can see this being in the realm of 380, which in the face of 500 quid looks like a very, very appealing option to a lot of people. And as I've said before on this podcast, usually, or certainly in the last couple of generations, the cheapest console has won the quotes console war. And this will be the cheapest console. This will be the cheapest next-gen console.
Yeah, but we've never had this kind of skew at launch.
We have not. We have not. That is true. But nonetheless, this will be the cheapest next-gen console.
It's also important to note, we don't actually know at all yet whether this will be at launch. Even going back to the previous story, and obviously this is because they haven't announced the Series S yet, but that mentioned when the Series X launches globally in November. It didn't mention that there would be anything else. So there's a chance that this comes down the line, and that would again change how that initial adoption goes. Just to go back, like, if you're currently a Xbox One X gamer, why would you get the Series S? I can't see that many people would.
Because it's cheap. Because it's a cheap option into the next gen. But that's why a lot of people would do that. But
it's not offering you any substantial, like,
it offers you next gen games. That's what it offers you, which Xbox are claiming
there aren't any
backwards compatible. Yeah. No, there aren't any. It's just not.
No, there aren't any, and that what they have said several times, although they are backtracking on it, but it is that there won't be generational exclusives for the first year or two of the console. So we're still yet to see with any certainty which of those games that they have announced so far are within that window and whether that message is complete.
But nonetheless, that box still carries you forward from that point on, whereas your One X or your One S just now does not.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you could hang on to that for that amount of time, but I reckon that would be starting to feel pretty dated by that point. I think that this will outsell the Series X. Like, I have almost no doubt about that just because of the price point.
Yeah.
Quite genuine.
I'm not saying that it won't do that at all, but I wonder where it's grabbing players from in that perspective.
Assuming that it is cheap as well, because the last time Xbox done this to us was the Xbox All Digital Edition, where it was widely thought that this was going to be a very cheap entry point into their ecosystem, and it came out and it really wasn't.
Yeah.
So if they don't make that mistake again, I actually think this is a pretty good move. Alright, news item number 3. Still more Xbox-less. xCloud this time though, and it's now available on Android phones as a beta, but it may never be out on iOS phones at all, as it turns out. Regarding the beta, Xbox have told The Verge this.
As we approach the launch of cloud gaming with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate on September 15th, we're entering a limited beta period to ensure a smooth transition of the cloud gaming experience to the Xbox Game Pass app on Android. Existing Xbox Game Pass beta app users will get the opportunity to test a subset of the available titles as we ready the experience for broader availability next month. This limited beta is critical to providing the best possible experience for members at launch and should not be considered indicative of the final experience or library.
So The Verge has also said that, kind of regarding the library, the 100 games that were promised at launch, which is coming fully in September, they reckon that there's going to be around 30 games for this beta, which by the looks of it is going to include like a lot of the older Halo games and whatever, and a lot of the older Gears games, and basically a lot of the stuff that you would want this for anyway. So good showing there from Xbox, definitely, but it will require a Games Pass Ultimate subscription to be part of that beta as well. And honestly, I know that the first half of the news is definitely not looking great for Xbox, or certainly we've been quite negative about Xbox, but this, I fucking love this. I love this so much, and I really, really hope that this goes well for them. I genuinely do. However, fucking Apple are not allowing game streaming apps on their App Store, and an Apple spokesman has told Business Insider this.
The App Store was created to be a safe and trusted place for customers to discover and download apps, and a great business opportunity for all developers. Before they go in our store, all apps are reviewed against the same set of guidelines that are intended to protect customers and provide a fair and level playing field to developers. Our customers enjoy great apps and games from millions of developers, and gaming services can absolutely launch on the App Store as long as they follow the same set of guidelines applicable to all developers, including submitting games individually for review and appearing in charts and search. In addition to the App Store, developers can choose to reach all iPhone and iPad users over the web through Safari and other browsers on the App Store.
So basically, this boils down to the fact that the games aren't being submitted individually to Apple for review, and that is the flimsy-ass excuse that they're using not to put the xCloud app on their App Store. Now, this rule is completely arbitrary and is completely arbitrarily imposed by Apple. No one's making them do this, and only applies to game streaming. It does not apply to music on Spotify, which they have not reviewed every single song on that. They have not reviewed every single video on YouTube. They've not reviewed every single book on Kindle, and they've not reviewed every single movie on Netflix. So what makes games so fucking special? Well, it's a direct competitor to Apple. That's what makes games so special, and it's bullshit. There's no reason why that should be any different, and I hate this about Apple. We both have iPhones. I'm currently recording this podcast on a Mac. I actually very much like Apple products, but it's stuff like this that absolutely boils my blood about Apple. I hate this stuff so much.
And I can see why, Mark, to be honest. I mean, this isn't ideal. As you just said, we're both Apple users. That means effectively we're not going to be able to do this on our phones, at least on those devices.
No, certainly not in the near future either, I would gather, because even if Apple do change their tune about this, Apple are glacially slow about anything about changing their policy, so this will not be for years.
And I don't think that they will, to be totally honest, partly because of that thing, as you just said, about the competition.
They're going to be left behind in this. Like, I genuinely believe that game streaming is going to be a huge thing in the next generation. Whether or not you believe that just now because of the bad rep, quite frankly, that it's got from Google Stadia, which also isn't allowed on Apple stores, I genuinely still believe that this is going to be a big part of the next gen, and Apple will be left behind in this.
I mean, I think that's a stretch, because Apple are never going to be left behind by anything. They'll either adapt and change and bring it in some way, or they'll invent their own system, or
which will be worse,
or we'll just accept it. I mean, there's no way right now in my mind, if Xbox Game Pass isn't available on there, or xCloud isn't available on there by the time I go to renew my phone, that is not going to stop me getting an iPhone over an Android, you know?
Yes, that is technically true, because I don't envision myself using my phone very much as a gaming device. Yeah. However, it's not the point. It's that Apple has decided for me that I'm not allowed it on their system, which is very frustrating when every Android phone in the world can absolutely fine. Yeah, come on and join the beta. It's very, very frustrating from my point of view. And just can I say as well, Apple's excuse for this, they said that games are interactive unlike music and film, and the consumer has expectations baked into the Apple Store relating to games. That was their excuse why this doesn't also apply to YouTube and every other app that has additional content within it. Again, it's just bullshit. Like, it's just thinly veiled bullshit.
I mean, yeah, it is and it's not. Like, these are the rules as they've laid them down, and we might not like them, but
we do not like them.
But Microsoft also would have known this, and particularly when Stadia got rejected. So I do think that there's a bit of, I don't know, there's a little bit of game playing going on there when it's sort of Microsoft versus Apple, and one side's on the consumer side and Apple are being really anti-consumer, because to me it boils down to it's shit. Absolutely it's shit. I'm not going to pretend it isn't shit for us even specifically.
Specifically it is shit for us, yes. But the PlayersToo Podcast is shit for us.
But at the same time, there was never any real reason to think that was going to be different. And maybe the weight of it all, if it's a huge success and people are really demanding it, and if they do see a bit of a shift from gamers who want to game on their mobile, you know, say Apple Arcade subscriptions drop a bit and Xbox Game Pass subscriptions on Android start to go up, then maybe they'll react and do something. But I think until that moment, Apple are going to look at this and think, why would we let you distribute games through our channels when we distribute games through our channels? You know, that's what we're doing here.
I don't know, because they wouldn't be an arsehole about it in that situation.
Yeah, that's Apple all over, though. They've always gated the community, and that's worked. Part of the reason that you love Apple products is that as well. Like
No.
They keep stuff out that is bad.
I have no problem. I have no problem with curation, and I actually do like that about the App Store, is that it's just not full of absolute junk, unlike a lot of the Android stores. And I do genuinely like that about Apple. But there's a line that is crossed there all the time, do you know what I mean? And Apple have no problem whatsoever crossing that line. Alright, and news item number 4. Rocksteady, Lewis, have finally, praise the Lord, have finally confirmed that their new game will in fact be a Suicide Squad game. However, they announced this on a mere tweet with a picture of Superman with like a target on his head, basically saying that the full announcement will be announced in August the 22nd at the DC Fandome event, which is kind of what we were expecting anyway. So after waiting so very long to make this announcement, why didn't they just wait another couple of weeks and announce that event? Like, why have this thing on Twitter which announces the announcement?
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all. Anyway, we have now got the announcement, and it very much looks as though we will be getting announcements of both the WB Montreal Gotham Knights game and the Suicide Squad game at this DC event on August the 22nd, I believe. It's a bit of an underwhelming announcement or something that should be really, really cool. That's basically what I'm getting at here.
You mean the actual announcement itself?
The actual announcement. Yeah. And even the discourse around it, like, there wasn't any trailer, there wasn't anything. It was just this post, and I was like, yeah, that's amazing. But that's it.
Yeah, a static image with not a lot going on in it, really. I mean, it's largely white, even.
Yeah, it's Superman silhouetted against a white background with a target on his head that is sort of stylized to say Suicide Squad, and that's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's telling us everything that we sort of need to know at this point, but I agree, like, not a particularly interesting way to go about having announced this. I suspect it's being announced in this way so that people who wouldn't naturally watch that DC Fandome event will watch it, us being part of that.
Well, I was going to watch it anyway because I knew that there would be announcements for this from WB Games.
Exactly.
But,
so,
like, would I have sought it out? I mean, no more now than I would have done before, to be honest.
No, but plenty of people will. Plenty of people will see that they're going to get their Rocksteady news at last. But I would have preferred personally that we just kind of got the big
just a trailer, tease, anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like a 5-second teaser trailer, and I think the world would be feeling a lot better about this. Do you know what I mean? But not just a static image on Twitter. Do you know? It just felt like a very underwhelming way to finally say something about
maybe
what
they
game they're developing.
Don't have much to show. Yeah, you know.
Oh, Lewis, after this time, they bloody better. Honestly. Deary me. Also, related to WB Games, it seems that they are no longer up for sale, Lewis. According to gamesindustry.biz, according to internal communications, it seems to be suggesting that Warner Brothers have abandoned plans to sell their interactive entertainment division. Only a few weeks ago, we had a very lengthy conversation about the fact that Microsoft themselves were alleged to be interested in this, along with Take-Two, Activision, and EA, I believe, were all interested in getting a piece of this. But that seems to have gone away now. So for us PlayStation boys, that was a short-lived panic. However, despite the fact that Warner Media's CEO is called video games, quotes, a key pillar of the business, I actually think that for the right offer, they could probably be bought relatively easily, or the rights to create games with their properties could be bought relatively easily, because I don't think that you put something like that up for sale and so publicly and then just pull it back like this and not still have those feelings there. Do you know what I mean? To me, it doesn't really read very well. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Broadly the same. I mean, I did wonder before if there's some businessy, we'll inflate the price of what we've got by potentially selling it, seeing what the offers would be, and therefore, creating a bit of a bidding war or something. I think that what you just said is quite interesting, in that maybe they will just look at it down the line and go, actually, some of these properties are really hot and people want a piece of them, and we could do interesting things with those.
Yeah, license them out.
Yeah, but we don't have to...
Marvel style, basically.
Exactly like what Marvel are doing. But we can maintain the broader piece and still have that. Because still have that control over it. Yeah, because you've got to think that they're looking at that going, if we release a Batman game every year, that's guaranteed income, so maybe we shouldn't sell that,
I also wonder how much these two games that are coming out, this Gotham Knights game and the Suicide Squad game, which, I mean, should be big hits for them. I wonder if we see how they perform and then we make a decision. Exactly. I wonder if that also factors in. All right, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout outs. Shout out number 1, Lewis. Horizon Zero Dawn has finally come out on PC. Hurrah! This makes the first PlayStation developed game to come to PC, I believe. It's currently sitting at an 84 on Metacritic, which is a slightly tepid score to what you might have expected by a game that is so lauded by critics, but I think that it is just the fact that it's actually not really that well optimized for PC by all accounts, which really is quite disappointing considering this is the first major PlayStation developed game to go to PC. I'd have thought that they would have wanted to go onto the PC gaming platform with a bang, and it's simply not turned out that way. Visually, it looks absolutely stunning on PC. I was looking at some ultra-wide shots and stuff like that. Absolutely incredible. However, it does seem to be that as you play the game, experiencing random frame rate drops for no apparent reason whatsoever is relatively commonplace, and the game just crashing outright as well also seems to happen on a more regular basis than anyone is comfortable with, I will say. However, it's really disappointing, because if you can play this game, I would strongly recommend that you do if you are a PC gamer, because for me it is easily one of the games of the generation. Alright, shout out number 2, and in complete contrast to that, Fast and the Furious Crossroads has come out, Lewis, and by all accounts it may be one of the worst games of this year.
There was us dead excited about it too.
Oh man. You may remember this game as being the closing announcement of the Game Awards last year. This was the final announcement of the whole show. Vin Diesel came out on stage, it was a whole thing. It's currently sitting at a truly abysmal score of 33 on Metacritic, List. That is only based on 4 reviews, because only 4 people have bothered to review it, which I think is also particularly telling. From what I've been able to gather from just a few videos and just reading a few articles, the car controls are absolutely awful, the camera angle is absolutely awful, and the car actually blocks out where you're supposed to be going sometimes. The missions are very repetitive, it is very short. Apparently the game can be complete in 5 hours. This is a full price title as well, remember. This is a full price game. The online, because I don't think the game is sold very well, is completely empty, and even when you do get a game online, it performs even worse online than it does as a single player game. And by all accounts, it's real bad, Liz. It's really bad. So if you were looking forward to the Fast and Furious game, maybe think again.
Yeah, go and play a PlayStation 2 driving game. That's probably about the level of it.
Mate, it has takedowns. It has Burnout style takedowns in it. It genuinely does. And it comes out and says takedown in the middle of the screen like it used to do in old Burnout games. Go and play Burnout 3. It's a much better game. Alright, shout out number 3. Nintendo has announced Pikmin 3 Deluxe Edition, which is coming to Switch. Now, this is pretty much a remaster of Pikmin 3, which was originally a Wii U game. This is very much the same treatment as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Very much the same treatment again. I think that this might be one of the last games that we see getting this deluxe treatment, to be honest with you, just because I can't think of any other games off the top of my head right now. But I think that we're now getting to the point where fans of Pikmin are going, well, we really wanted Pikmin 4 and you've given us a port of an old game. I think that we're kind of getting to the point where we're not really interested in getting ports from the Wii U anymore. We're interested in getting new IP.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or, not new IP, excuse me, but new games for your IP. I don't know, I felt as if this announcement fell a wee bit flat. In a year of falling quite flat for Nintendo, I felt as if this announcement kind of came out and they went, yay, and we all kind of went, okay.
Well, yeah, also the fact that it's still months away, like I think it's not coming out until October.
But even still, it's a relatively short, like, announce it and then game comes out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Which is very much Nintendo's vibe this year
But
as well. I mean,
it's-
they did the same with Paper Mario, and I think they did the same with Xenoblade as well.
But something like Paper Mario, it was a game that no one was kind of expecting, and it dropped, and there was that short window. But I think for Nintendo fans who at the moment have nothing to look forward to for the rest of the year, like no first party games at all, to announce that, but you still have to wait 3 months, and it's a port. You know, it's not ideal.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel great. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Whereas Pikmin 4, new game, new announcement, everybody's feeling great
Simple
about it. You
as,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Yeah. I think it's a little bit disappointment, and again, a year that has been a little bit disappointing for Nintendo. And final shout out number 4. Gamers who have Virgin Media OS in the UK and Verizon phones in the US will get exclusive skins in Marvel's The Avengers. This is among the dumbest things I've ever heard in video games, certainly in a very, very long time. And they look terrible as well. They look absolutely awful. I think that they are truly awful looking skins. And I cannot quite work out who wins in this deal, because gamers are not running out to get Virgin Media to get god-awful looking skins. And Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix look even worse now after the PlayStation exclusivity thing. And Virgin Media will, I assume, be advertising this game for them. But it's a Marvel game. It's going to be everywhere anyway.
Yeah.
What difference does that make? So I have no idea what this is about. It's truly stupid. The skins look awful, and I hate it.
Plain and simply.
Yep.
It feels to me like Square Enix have quite an out-of-date approach towards this kind of tie-up between games and licenses and products. Remember they were doing Final Fantasy VII noodle packets and stuff recently?
Oh yeah, that's actually still a thing. I saw them in Tesco not that long
Yeah,
ago.
exactly. And so it's just something about that, and this is so 90s. It doesn't feel like it belongs
do you know what,
anymore.
mate? You have hit the nail on the head. This feels really, really 90s. That felt as if what they were doing with the first Final Fantasy game. Do you know what I mean? It does feel very 90s. It just feels very outdated and weird. And why are they tied into an ISP or a media company in general? What have they got anything to do with this? Why do they have their own skins, even if they are? It's so strange. Square Enix, I love you, but you're a bunch of weirdos. You really are. And on that note, Liz, it's time for a beer, and we will be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is the PlayStation State of Playlist. Now, we had something else entirely prepared for this part of the show, but then Xbox took over the news, and as Sony ponies, we can't have that, Liz. We cannot have that. So Topic of the Week is going to be talking about the State of Play, which I'm very excited about, because I actually thought it was quite good overall.
Decent, yeah.
I actually thought it was quite good. But they did set expectations nice and clear from the get-go. They said that there would be a focus on upcoming PlayStation 4 games and PSVR games. There would be a quick check-in on third-party and indie games shown in the June PS5 showcase, but there would be no big PS5 announcements. That was the critical line going in. There would be no big PS5 announcements. But they did open the show with Crash Bandicoot 4 Loose. They once again emphasised immediately off the bat that this was a direct sequel to Crash 3, and that everything that came after Crash 3 was nonsense and to ignore it. And we got to see a whole bunch of new gameplay, and it looked great. It looked absolutely great. They got to see like a whole bunch of new mechanics. They announced as well that you got to play as Cortex and Dingo Dial, which I know was your favourite from Crash Team Racing. I remember racing you with Dingo Dial quite a lot. And they also showed off this inverted mode, which is basically a new spin on the levels, which gave it some replayability that made them all slightly different, basically. Which I just thought was a quite interesting, unique, and weirdly quirky way to do it for Crash.
It was a strange replacement for effectively like a New Game Plus or whatever.
Yeah, or what was in the previous Crash games, like time trials and things like that. So it replaces that sort of thing and gives the game more replayability. And I'll be very interested to see how that plays out, to be completely honest with you. But ultimately, I think this game looks really good. Like, I think that it looks super tight. I think it looks like Crash Bandicoot taken from that Crash Bandicoot 3 era and just warped to 2020.
He's been writing that one
Oh
all
man,
day.
that just came at me in a flash of brilliance. But that is how it feels to me. Like, it literally just feels as if they've made those games and they've just brought it into 2020. And to be honest with you, from a Crash game, that's all I need.
That's all it needs to be, yeah, definitely. It feels to me like Toys for Bob are nailing it with this. They've looked at what made those original games special and beloved, and they've just drilled down on that. They've deepened it, they've made it look gorgeous, they've added things that modern gamers would expect. Like, they sort of pointed out in the trailer that they had loads of new costumes that you could put Crash in.
Oh yeah, and just on that as well, they have also confirmed that there will not be any microtransactions in this game. However, this is Activision, so we'll wait and see on that one.
But yes, it's just stuff that modern gamers would expect. So I think you're going to find new fans, and there's going to be so much there for old fans. It looks great.
Yeah. Also cool that you can play as different characters, and I know specifically you can play as Coco in any level in the game as well. You can play through the whole game as Coco rather than playing as Crash. After that was Hitman 3, or kind of specifically Hitman 1, 2 and 3, because the announcement here was that all of those games as of January 2021 would be coming to PSVR. It was only a very, very short trailer, but did show the PSVR view, the first person view of you garroting someone as Hitman. And I never really thought of this before, but what a cracking idea for a VR game.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be quite visceral and strange to play, I'm sure, but I'm so impressed that they have done this, that they've...
1, 2 and 3.
Exactly, to do the whole trilogy, not just to make the new game or a little sliver of one of the previous games. IO Interactive with this rebooted franchise have done so much, I think. You know, they've bundled content together, they've constantly updated it, they've made something that's really fun to play. I can't applaud them high enough. I just think they've absolutely nailed it with this trilogy.
I think this is the game that you love the most, that you've played the least.
Yeah, exactly.
Not at all.
Well, I've played the first one a little bit, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've watched gameplay videos of it, which I don't really do. I love the idea of Hitman, and I just never really dive into it, but so pleased to see them try this as well. I think it'll be great for VR players.
After that was Braid, Lewis. Braid, the indie darling, and dare I say, one of our favourite games ever, I would say, and definitely one of my favourite indie games ever.
One of the most important indie games ever.
Certainly one of the most important indie games ever, yes, is getting an anniversary edition, which is basically a remaster, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's getting all new hand-painted visuals, which I actually thought looked really good. They also made a big deal of pointing out that there would now be 9 pixels to every 1 pixel that was in the previous game, which actually, I think, I'm not sure how I feel about this stuff, do you know what I mean? I think that added to the charm of it a little bit. All new animations as well, they made for like smoother running and whatever, and new sounds and music. They also made a big deal about commenting on their commentary track, which includes things like puzzle design, visual arts and programming, and they made a big statement saying that they wanted this to be the most expansive commentary track on any video game ever, which I think is really, really cool. And they even said, if you're interested in game design, come and listen to this. Yeah. So I am actually pretty interested in buying this game again. I mean, I probably would have bought this game again anyway, let's be honest. But to listen to that track, like absolutely to listen to that track. And this anniversary edition, if you've never played Braid, if you never played it along with us when we played Braid, then this is a brilliant excuse to play. Honestly, one of the best indie games ever, and as Lewis said, one of the most important indie games ever. And that is coming in early 2021. After that was Pathless. This is a game that I feel as though I've been hearing about for years, Lewis. I feel as though I've been hearing about this game for years and years and years. And when it was announced on this showcase, I messaged you and said, isn't the Pathless out yet? And as it turns out, no, it's not. It is an open world game, which is clearly very inspired by Breath of the Wild. I don't think that's unfair to say. But, I mean, if you're going to be inspired by something, might as well make it something absolutely amazing. And they had a bit of a deep dive on this. They showed some of the mechanics, particularly how you move in the world, which is by shooting orbs with your arrow, so you're an archer in this game. And that makes you move faster through the world, like run faster.
It sort of refills your dash meter.
Refills your dash meter, but it's very interesting. You do seem to move very fluidly and very quickly as well through the world. And also you have an eagle companion, and they were showing you how that worked. And they showed off a little bit of the puzzles and how one of the boss fights worked. One of the more interesting things about this game is that there is no map and no fast travel, which obviously puts a heavy emphasis on exploration, a lot like Breath of the Wild. And honestly, this is the first time that I've seen this game that I thought, here, do you know what? That actually looks pretty good.
Absolutely agree with that, Mark. I went back later on and rewatched the trailer after the State of Play was finished. Like you said, it's been knocking around for ages. It was trailed as one of the big launch games for Apple Arcade and got pulled at the last second. And so watching this trailer now, I'm so glad that it hasn't come out yet and that they've put a bit more time into it, and it looks like it's been heavily supported by PlayStation, because I thought it looked really, really fun.
I was surprised at how much I liked it.
Yeah, the motion in particular, I just think is so exciting to have a game that looks pretty chill in a lot of ways. It's just like quite floaty.
Fairly muted art style,
exactly,
very stylish, but quite a muted palette.
And quite an empty world from what we've seen so far. Little puzzly sections and then some big, Breath of the Wild style monster beast things to take down. I wonder if that will almost feel like Shadow of the Colossus to an extent.
Nice.
Everything about, I mean, even the sequence that they showed of pursuing and fighting that big fiery dog thing, I just thought that looks great. It looks like a hell of a lot of fun to be on the sticks for that game, so I'm really excited about that one.
And that is coming on holidays at 2020 and almost certainly a launch title for the PS5, I would have thought. After that was Spelunky 2. Now, this is a long awaited sequel to the first Spelunky game, which of course was an indie darling in and of itself. And again, they showed quite a bit of gameplay here. And as I was saying to you just before we started recording this, I've never played the first Spelunky game, but I think that I might, because that Spelunky 2 looks really, really tight and looks like a hell of a lot of fun. It's obviously one of these games where you die and die and die and die and die and try again and try again and try again. roguelike, which is not generally my bag. I really think that it did look great, and to be honest with you, it just looked like old Spelunky on a bigger budget, which is no bad thing at all. I'm not saying that as a criticism. They also announced that they would have like an online multiplayer, which I think was a big deal for them, and it's coming out in September the 15th. And yep, I honestly thought the gameplay looked great, looked really interesting. After that was Genshin Impact, and this was Anime Breath of the Wild this time, Loss. I don't really know what to say about this. It was an anime-ass anime game. It looked like Breath of the Wild with anime characters. It looked fine. It's coming on autumn 2020, and if that takes your interest, then you can go and look up. After that was Aeon Must Die. This was a very stylish looking side-scrolling beat-em-up game, and on initially seeing it, both of us texting one another while we were both watching it, thought this game looked really good, amazing, visually very, very striking. But since then, unfortunately, there's been quite a lot of controversy around this game, particularly from the developers Limestone Games.
Yeah, it seems like a group of, I guess now, former employees of Limestone, almost immediately as soon as the trailer was shown during State of Play, released a statement online basically saying that elements of the game had been stolen from them, made some fairly serious allegations basically about how the game has continued to be developed after they've departed from the company. Focus Interactive, the publishers, have had to look into this now. They've sort of put out a statement saying they're
investigating the situation.
So, a messy thing. We obviously don't know very much here. There's quite a lot to it. It's worth reading into if you're interested, because as you were just saying, Mark, the game visually very really amazing.
Looking, yeah, absolutely.
Of all the games shown, it's one of those ones that would really stick out to you, I think. And so, be a shame if that became really mired in controversy. I guess we wait and see how that.
I think it's one of these ones you need to wait
exactly.
And if out, but the allegations
they're serious,
not good.
and if they're maintained, then hopefully something can be done to recompense those people or whatever. But we'll see. Yeah.
Certainly, and that's coming in 2021. After that was Anno Mutationum, which again was an anime as fuck looking 2D action platformer. We got to see again a good bit of gameplay in this. It kind of caught my eye a little bit. Yeah. But honestly, it's one of these things. It's a new indie game, worth keeping an eye on, but really that's about it. And it's coming in December 2020. After that was the old faithful Bugsnax list. Here it is again.
It's Bugsnax.
It's Bugsnax. God almighty. Again, this was absolutely full of gameplay. This was a sort of gameplay trailer for it. It was fully as mental as you would expect it to be. This game absolutely isn't for me, and I know that I'm being quite flippant about it, right? But I actually quite like the fact that it's just totally fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's just totally fun. It's unabashedly fun and dumb, and I quite like that about it. Yeah. I really do. It did have a weird twisted dark tone at the end, to be honest with you. But I do like that it's just fun. It's just fun. It's like Fall Guys. It's just unabashedly fun. It doesn't matter what Metacritic score this game gets, because it's just good fun, and I think that a lot of people are responding really positively to it. So I genuinely hope that even though the game isn't for me, that it does well, and that's coming in holidays 2020 and almost certainly a launch title for the PS5. After that was Vader Immortal. This is another VR game which sees you play as a Jedi. This has been announced long ago. Again, it feels I've been hearing about this game for a long time as well. I think it's a cracking idea for a video game. So I mean, who doesn't want to be a Jedi in VR? Incredible. And that's coming on August the 25th. After that was the Control Awe expansion. This again just showed off a bit of gameplay. Honestly, it looked like more Control.
And that
is no bad thing. That is no bad thing as far as I'm concerned. And that is coming on August the 27th and included Alan Wake.
It did, yeah. They certainly know how to cut together a trailer, those guys, because again, they show that game off so well. And I had a lot of issues playing it, but watching it again, you're just like, okay.
I had a lot of technical issues playing it, but actually the enjoyment of playing that game, I really enjoyed it. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. After that was an announcement that Auto Chess is coming to PlayStation on October the 31st. There was really no announcement apart from that, but if you're into Auto Chess, maybe something to keep an eye on. Then after that was The Pedestrian. This is an indie 2D puzzle platformer which sees you play as a stick person on a set of signs that you can connect together. Now, that is an absolutely god-awful description of the game, but it actually looked pretty good.
Yeah,
like, I actually genuinely thought that game looked really interesting and really fun, and a very quirky indie concept that I just like to see daft concepts like that realised sometimes, you know what I mean?
Well, also, it reminded me a little bit of Gorogoa in the way that it plays, like just kind of lining up different objects and then having a character move through them in interesting ways. So yeah, just as a wee indie puzzle game, that's always going to catch my attention, so it looks pretty cool.
and that's coming in January 2021. After that was Hood Outlaws and Legends. This game was narrated by a lovely Scottish man, a lovely Scottish man. However, that is where my interest in this game ended because it really looked very blatantly like a rip-off of Assassin's Creed. Yeah. Now, we were talking about games that look like Breath of the Wild. I would say that these games were inspired by Breath of the Wild. This game looks like Assassin's Creed. Like it literally looks like Assassin's Creed, and the characters in it were all hooded in a very Assassin's Creed looking way. And the only difference seems to be is that this one is set in Britain. It was fairly uninspiring, if I'm completely honest with you.
The next Assassin's Creed game is set in Britain as well. So.
Yeah, but you're a Viking. This one you play as a Brit.
I'm just pointing out the absolute... I mean, if you watch this trailer, if you haven't seen it yet,
imagine Assassin's Creed
exactly,
Great Britain.
Imagine the Assassin's Creed logo comes up at the end. You would not be surprised in the slightest.
Yeah. It looked pretty generic and uninspired. To say this is derivative would be kind, but that is coming in 2021. Speaking of rip-offs, Temtem Lewis. Temtem was next. This game is heavily inspired by Pokemon and actually looks pretty good. Although, unlike Hood, I would say that this is very honest about what it's trying to be and what it's trying to, quotes, rip off. But it's an interesting spin on a Pokemon game. It's one of the only monster collectible games that I can think of, and I cannot believe there have not been more considering the success of Pokemon. And honestly, I was interested in it when it came out on Steam, and it has been out on Steam for a wee while. And depending on the price on PlayStation, might be picking it up.
Nice.
Might see how it goes. And it's coming to PlayStation in 2021. And finally, Lewis, was Godfall. And they took a deep dive into the gameplay, which, considering this was supposed to be the big finish, this was the big finish of the whole showcase, was pretty bloody boring.
Yeah.
It really was pretty boring. They basically explained how a video game works, and it was really, really dull and really patronising quite a lot of the time. The game itself looks fine, honestly. It looks fine. I actually have nothing against the game in the slightest. It's a looter slasher in the same way that Borderlands is like a, what was that called? A shooter?
A looter shooter.
Looter shooter, that was it, thanks. It's not for me. It's just not for me. The game isn't for me. I can see why this game would appeal to a lot of people, and actually I saw as much positive feedback to this as negative feedback on Twitter. I think a lot of people were surprisingly positive about this, despite the unbelievably boring deep dive on how video games work. But it's just not for me, really, to be honest with you. This was the first PS5 game that was ever revealed, if you remember, also back at the Game Awards. But yeah, not for me. They did also go out of their way to point out that there would be no microtransactions in this game. However, this is Gearbox, and like Activision, we'll see about that, because Gearbox did promise no microtransactions in Borderlands 3, and, well, we know how that played out.
Yeah, Godfall's doing absolutely nothing for me, I've got to say. The idea of a looter slasher, I never thought I was the kind of person who was interested in looting games at all, and then we played Borderlands 3, and I did kind of get a kick out of it. Not really the loot part, but just the kind of the fun, slightly unhinged vibe
but that was why Borderlands is great. It's that weird, wacky vibe that it has. It's sort of like dumb good fun, whereas this is quite a lot more serious in tone.
Well, this was the thing. It's so serious. It's taking itself so seriously. It's like beating you over the head with I am a serious fantasy world, and I just can't be bothered with that at all. Like I just it really turns me off.
It really is the total opposite to Borderlands in a lot of ways. It's worth pointing out as well that Gearbox are publishing this game. They are not developing this game, unlike Borderlands. But yeah, it wasn't doing a lot for me either, mate. I've got to admit. But I can see why it would be appealing to a lot of people.
People will
just
go
not
for
for
it,
me.
absolutely.
Just not for me. Yeah. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, decent.
Considering the guidelines, the very clear parameters under which they announced this state of play, I thought it was pretty good. I thought the standout was easily Crash. As far
really?
As I was
yeah. I think the Pathless was the one that stuck with me the most. I mean, it was a great showing off for Crash. A lot of games in there, even thinking about things like the Control DLC and that kind of, just a really solid show of decent games with new stuff coming to it.
Solid. Nothing mind blown.
Exactly.
Nothing mind blown. Solid. Good.
Interesting as well.
Nothing to get upset about.
yeah, exactly that. Nothing that overstated, what the show was supposed to be or whatever. Interesting as well that some of the games referred to being PS4 games, even beyond the point that we expect the PS5 to launch. So just from my notes, The Pedestrian said it was a PS4 game and it's coming out in January. So that's Sony essentially saying, like, the games are not stopping coming to this platform. We have over 112 million installs now on PS4. So they're not going to stop supporting that anytime soon.
Oh no, they'd have to.
And so we're going to keep seeing games coming to it, and and that's great. And probably most, if not all of those, will also come to PS5, obviously. But yeah, I thought overall, if you're a PS4 gamer, there's plenty here to keep you interested over the next 6 months.
100%, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we will have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, again, it really, really helps us out. I know I say it every week, twice a week, Lewis, twice a week I say this, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. And if you have already done that for us, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot, and you're an absolute legend to us. But if you haven't, it really does only take you 5 seconds, and it would help us out so much, and you would be a legend to us. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is Transistor, and after our glowing review, I think, of Bastion, we are both very, very excited to play it. I have now platinumed Ghost of Tsushima, so I might just go in it. Next,
I'm going to have to fit it in around quite a horrendous work schedule over the next few weeks, so I'm probably going to be playing it simultaneously with Ghost. But
and knowing Lewis's work schedule, good luck with that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.